is about hi Tanya, can I ask you to turn your camera off, please? Thank you. This session is all about the things that you need to know and would like to know about doing a doctorate. We've been joined by 3 of our current postgraduate researchers at the University of Wolverhampton, Tavashni Naidu, Chris Martin and Evelyn Price. They are all studying different areas and different routes. So Tavashni is a full-time PhD student, Evelyn's a part-time PhD student, and Chris is a part-time EdDoc student, so doing a professional doctorate. So whilst we're waiting for Ben, who was supposed to be giving a little bit of information about the process, what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite our panelists to talk a little bit about their experiences of being doctoral students at the University of Wolverhampton, advice that they would give to you as applicants or potential applicants, and a little bit about why they chose us and not other people. So I'm going to hand over to you guys. Who would like to go first?
Don't all shout at once.
Okay.
Okay, please. Shall I go first then, shall I?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, okay, good afternoon everyone. So my name is Chris Martin, just hold for Coldplay references. And I'm doing a part-time professional doctorate in education. I am in the final stages and I'm looking at submitting my thesis within the next week or so. So exciting times. I am also a full-time teacher in an independent school where I am the head of languages, and I'm also a member of the senior leadership team. So quite a lot going on. But the professional doctorate in education, actually the mode, the mixture of face-to-face and online, actually best suited my circumstances, my teaching, and I also have care commitments as well. But also the thing that actually appealed to me about the professional doctorate was how it links perfectly with my professional practice. So the emphasis of a PhD is the contribution to knowledge. And with a professional doctorate, that's actually extended to a contribution to knowledge and practice. So the work that I have done in my thesis has been directly related to my practice as a teacher. And I thought that getting that from the prof doc was really important to me. I actually completed my BA and my PGCE at Wolverhampton. So I do have quite a strong affiliation to the university, and I know the ins and outs, how it works. And more importantly, my supervisor has actually published widely in my field and was the perfect fit for the study that I wanted to do. So I couldn't have asked for a better supervision team, a better doctoral college to be part of, and just generally the University of Wolverhampton has been the best choice for my doctorate.
Thank you, Chris. So who would like to talk next?
Okay, I'll go. Evelyn, is that okay?
Yeah, fine.
Okay. My name is Tavashni, and I have been 3 years with the University of Wolverhampton. I'll talk a little bit about how I chose Wolverhampton. So I did a master's in inclusive practice with the Open University, and I've been teaching English for the past 27 years. And while walking in my classroom one day in the by the way, I'm not in England, I'm in the United Arab Emirates. This is where my research is situated. So I'm based here and it's ethnographic. So while I was doing my master's, my master's tutor recommended a particular supervisor. And one of the things I would recommend if you are thinking about doing a doctorate is to firstly look at supervision. And I had to look at, well, I knew at that time that I wanted to do ethnography. And I looked through the profiles of various universities. I did get places at other universities, but when I found the university that had the subject area and the expertise in that subject area, I just thought that was the person that I need to contact. So I contacted Professor Peter Lavender, who is my main supervisor, he's my director of studies. And he then chose Dr. Deborah Curtin, who is here with us today. And he said, well, if you want to do this type of methodology, which is ethnography, she's the best person. But he still left the choice up to me. I looked up Deborah's profile, and I knew exactly at that point that that is what I needed. So I don't regret it at all. I've enjoyed every minute of working with Deborah and Peter and the whole of the doctoral college. Actually, I've said it before, but we're very much like a family. And I'm saying that as somebody who lives very far away from the campus. I only visit this campus maybe twice a year at the most. I have my home in England, but I live out here. So I've been very blessed to have such an interaction, I think. Even Ben and I, we speak a lot, and we tweet a lot together, and Chris and I have been to conferences together. Evelyn's always sharing her ideas with us, and we're very much one big family at Wolverhampton. And I think that's the thing that anyone coming into the doctoral college will really, benefit from, the camaraderie. And I say this because I'm in contact with other students here. I have a PhD peer group, and not every university works this way. So, I'm not getting paid to say this. It's the truth. It's the absolute truth. And so I am full-time. I'm in my final year, in my write-up year. And like Chris, I think practice is important. So it's actually helped me a lot to link my practice, even though it's a PhD, and PhDs are supposed to be theoretical as such and generate theory. But being a teacher in the field that I am researching has helped me quickly to get data and to be able to get ethical clearance. It's not easy to go through those motions, but I think it's easier if you're linking something that you're working with to your PhD, or if you could find work that supports your PhD. Yes, that's all. I'm just really glad that I chose Wolverhampton simply because of the people. You don't just, and also I must say, especially in the lockdown, I realized that we were one of the universities that were at the forefront of digital learning, because people like me who constantly need the internet to connect, and I have all my supervisions, almost all, for the year on Skype. And for me, this transition into lockdown learning and study was not a big thing. It was actually very normal. So yeah, thank you to Deborah, who always is putting up stuff on Canvas, and we've always got resources. We're never in fact, we always tell Deborah off for working too hard and always being available to us. I can't remember the days she's taken off, maybe 1 or 2 days when you had to go to a doctor or something, Deborah. And I do remember that once she was in the surgery or in the hospital, and she was marking my work and sending it to me. So, that's the kind of dedication that you will get here at Wolverhampton. So. Well chosen if you do.
I'm very embarrassed now. Thank you. Evelyn.
Hello, my name's Evelyn Price, and I'm studying a part-time PhD at the University of Wolverhampton. My thesis is a microhistory of humanitarian aid during and post both World Wars. where I hope to show how this small group of Quaker-based aid givers contributed to the professionalisation of humanitarian aid. I'm not doing a PhD for professional reasons. I'm doing it really just to see if I can do a PhD. I'm doing it to push myself. As a mature student, I started at the university 10 years ago to see if I could actually do a degree. I'd never been to university before, so it was a massive leap for me. I did my BA, finished that, wanted to continue, did my MA, enjoyed that. And then I thought, well, what am I going to do now with all this knowledge that I've acquired over these years? And I saw an advert on the Wolverhampton website asking for researchers. So I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. I sent an email. Within a few hours, my now supervisor, Professor Steiner, replied asking me to come in for a meeting, even though he was actually teaching in Vienna at the time. So that just shows you, that's one example of the pastoral care that you do get at Wolverhampton. So that's really leads me on to why I chose Wolverhampton. It's already been said. It's the pastoral care that you get here. There's nothing that your supervisor or the staff, the doctoral college won't do to help you. If you need to reach out for any reason, there's always somebody there. Even if it's Sunday afternoon and I email my supervisor with some work that I need to hand in on Monday, he gets back to me, even if he's in Sainsbury's. So I think that's pretty incredible. And really, the staff at Wolverhampton, they do give you the support that you need, and they give you the tools to succeed. So basically, it's a win-win situation. And I would always recommend Wolverhampton to anybody considering doing any postgraduate work, but especially a PhD. I do feel that they give you everything that you need to get on. And please just go ahead and sign up. I really would recommend it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I couldn't get my I couldn't unmute. So I'm going to now hand over to Ben and ask Ben to talk to you a little bit about the process of making an application.
Thank you, Deborah. So I'm going to, and thank you as well to our colleagues who are current researchers for your advice and encouragement as well. So this is the science bit, as it were, and I want to talk a little bit about how we go about making an application. And I have some slides, so I'm going to hit share, and I'm going to hope that that's going to deliver the slides to you. But I can see that maybe it's not doing it. Can you see the slides, Deborah?
No, we can just see your desktop, I'm afraid.
Ooh. What did we do last time to achieve this?
Sometimes if you do it the second time, it works. Share doesn't always work the first time. If you click on share.
Let's stop sharing and then start again.
Start again, yeah.
We've had a few technical issues today. Teams have been playing up. Yes, we can see that now.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So what I'll do is I will steam through this. Not all of it's going to be that relevant to colleagues who are listening into this broadcast today. So if there are any questions, just shout them out, and I'm sure Deborah can pick them up and then just feed them to me as I'm talking, if that's okay. And I'll be happy to talk in more detail about any aspect, of course, that I'm looking at. So I'm really discussing how you go about applying for doctoral study with us and what kind of modes of doctoral study we have. We have a number. We have the standard PhD. We also have the MPhil route as well for those who are looking for a kind of master's by research that typically takes just a couple of years. So we have the MPhil, we have the PhD, we have a number of professional doctorates. We have PhDs by published work that are for staff at Wolverhampton only. They're not for people who are not employed by Wolverhampton. We have full-time and part-time modes, and we have the ability to switch people between the two, which happens a fair amount. And of course, as with any university, we have the option to take a leave of absence, extension mechanisms and things like this. And we also have an international distance route. So we're able to provide supervision to people who are based in other countries. That's no problem at all. We have a whole system around that that involves online supervision, but also, if necessary, agreements with local universities to them around resources and access, labs, studios. It kind of depends on what they want to study, but we're able to deliver that, and we have delivered that successfully across a number of different countries. So we have quite a wide variety. I should also note that fairly uniquely among all UK universities, number one, we can start you any month, apart from professional doctorates. So January, February, March, whatever you want, we can start you on the 1st of any month. Most universities have 3 or maybe even 2 entry points a year that can lead to some hanging around. The second thing is that for PhD, we have no minimum registration period. If you're full-time, most universities will allow you to submit only from month 36, i.e. year 3 onwards. For us, we allow you to submit when you're ready. And when you submit, that stops fees. So we have a number of people that will submit, early, and that's quite okay. Sometimes it will be people who have come in with some significant research or industry experience already under their belt, which they want to expand. So we have a variety there of modes of study and types of PhDs. Here are some key questions. I've sort of begun to answer the first one already. How long does it take? So for a full-time PhD, the expectation is 3 years of research, and then if you want it, a year of, writing up, and fees are lower for that or non-existent. They're £1,000 pro rata. So if you submit at month 36, then you don't pay a writing up fee. If you submit 6 months in, you pay £500. So in effect, the deadline for the full-time PhD will be 4 years from the starting point. All the other ones have got slightly different time ranges. So I don't think I want to talk too much about that now, but obviously all the information is on our website on the application portal. What I will say, though, I think maybe more usefully, is that the difference between full-time and part-time can be a little bit blurred. I think people tend to work at the pace that suits them best. And we're the University of Widening Access, so we're very conscious that people have families, have jobs, have other commitments, and we work around that. So we fit what we do to accommodate the researchers that we look after. We don't expect them necessarily to fit around us. So other universities might have more of a 9 to 5 mentality. We're not like that at all. We're not like that because we believe that this should be available to everybody, and therefore we need to fit around life commitments. So in terms of full-time and part-time, the difference can be a bit blurred, and it can be that you can, start sometimes part-time cautiously if you have other commitments in life, and then you can switch to full-time if you want the increased level of supervision attention. How big is the doctorate? That's, again, slightly difficult to answer because it's dependent on the nature of the discipline you're looking to. With sciences, typically across the sector, the written thesis could be 20, 30,000 words combined with data. In social sciences, humanities, across the sector, it tends to go up to 100,000 as a maximum. For us, 90,000, but that's the maximum. I mean, 75, 80,000 words would not be particularly unusual. That often scares people, but in fact, by the time you sort of press on into it, it doesn't take that long to write that much. What entry qualifications do I need? Again, we are looking to accommodate the profile of people as they come to us. Typically across the sector, there'd be an expectation of a good first degree, that is a first or a 2-1, and a master's, possibly a master's with distinction. Not so much for us. If you come with industry, professional, charity sector, teaching experience and a first degree, would be happy to look at what you've got and consider that. And indeed, in some areas, particularly sciences, we can take you straight from a first degree. I think what I'm trying to say is that the way that some universities process applications, there's a lot of yes, no, and a lot of the no is around the standard profile of the entrant. And we work very hard to move around that. And I think part of our success in that is the diversity of our population in terms of ages, in terms of backgrounds, in terms of ethnicity, and in terms of the countries they're from. So we're keen to hear from you rather than having you fit to what it is that we're asking for. Again, if there are specific questions, we can deal with them in the chat, or even we can deal with them via email. Here are some key questions. How much does it cost? What about working during study? And what about the student loan company? Well, you can imagine there are different levels of fees for full-time and part-time. On a standard PhD, the full-time cost is about £4,000 a year at the moment, or 4,120 or something like that. And it would go up slightly with inflation each year. I do mean slightly. Part-time is half of that. And indeed, there are various payment options which include quarterly payments. So if you're part-time and you're paying quarterly, conceivably, if you're holding down a job, it actually becomes quite a doable option. And this is quite a good moment because this is the cheapest degree there is. Masters cost a lot more, undergraduate degrees cost a lot more. There are different levels of fees for international students. At the moment, as with all universities, there is some ambiguity around how the British government defines international. So if you're starting this month, next month, and you're German, Italian, French, you would be paying standard home EU fees. If you're outside the home EU boundaries, however they then come to be defined, then you would be paying international fees, which are higher than home EU fees. The fees for professional doctorates are also different as well. All of these are on the website on the application portal, which will give you the fees for the current academic year and for the coming academic year as well. What about working during study? The standard advice from UK research councils is that you shouldn't do more than 16 hours a week if you're full-time and you're working, and you're full-time researching and you're working. So 16 hours is maybe a couple of shifts in whatever job it is. However, I don't think anybody necessarily is checking. And I think that the main consideration is progress of the PhD to the satisfaction of yourself and your supervisors. So you could be working less, you could be working more if you want. It could be seasonal, it could be across certain periods, holiday periods. I mean, really, that's down to yourself. If you're on a scholarship, there may be some restrictions on that as well. If you're tier 4, which means you're international, there would also be restrictions on the number of hours you'd be able to work. But we have a UK VI compliance office, and they would give advice on those kind of things. What about the student loan company? Since last year, the student loan company has offered loans for PhD study for the first time ever. That loan is £25,000 payable in 3 lots. So the idea is that it covers the fees and it also delivers some money to live off. Whether that's necessarily sufficient is another matter, but you can supplement it with working if you wanted. The belief of the government is that people wouldn't necessarily take all of it, but they would take a few bits and pieces as and when they need it. I mean, I think across the sector over the last couple of years, there's always been a case of students running out of money, which is quite understandable if they're doing 4 years or 8 years and then going off to work for a bit and then coming back and things like that. So the hope was the student loan company would help by resolving all of that. They have a website which is terribly clear. It has frequently asked questions. I would check out the website. Basically, the position of it is that you need to be offered a place to do a PhD in the UK or professional doctorate. Then at the point at which you start, i.e. at which you register, you can then access the first tranche of the loan. So that's true for any arrangement with any university. So as I say, since 2019, for the first time, the student loan company has provided that funding, which is a good thing in many ways, because there was really no mechanism prior to that to access funding if you wanted to do a PhD. Okay, so here are some key questions that I think really engage with the general experience of doing a PhD. And here I want to talk about the University of Wolverhampton. What kind of supervisory support will I get? Well, each postgraduate researcher will have a supervisory team. That would typically have 2 people on, a first supervisor that we call the Director of Studies and a second supervisor. So you're dealing with these 2 people who are supporting you, and they will have complementary but different expertise areas. So these will be the most relevant people to look after you. We ourselves, as part of the application process, will make the suggestion as to who should be the supervisor. But if somebody's applying to us and they would like a certain person, especially if they're aware of that person's work, if they've worked with that person when they were, say, doing a master's or a first degree, of course, you know, we're going to try and make that arrangement for you. So you should have these 2 supervisors. You may not see them both for every meeting. You may see them both for every meeting. Meetings for full-time students would be at least once a month, probably a lot more. Again, it goes in cycles. I would say in the initial 6 months, the initial year, you may be meeting quite a lot. In hard science subjects where you're working in labs, you may see your supervisor every day. But beyond that, maybe when you're out doing field work, when you've gained a bit of confidence, you may not be meeting as much, but we would still ensure that there's the minimum requirement of 1 formal meeting a month. And then maybe towards the end of the PhD, you might be meeting an awful lot more as you look forensically around drafts of things you've written and you prepare to submit. Some people have more than 2 supervisors, depending on the nature of the subject itself. But at the same time, you'll have other people who are there for you. There'll be somebody there who's dealing with skills development in your particular faculty, so disciplinary specific skills. There'll be somebody who's also there for pastoral support, so a kind of standard support tutor, you know, should you want to use that person. Also, you will encounter on an annual basis, and this goes to the last question on this page, independent assessors. So once a year, you'll have what we call an annual progress review, where you submit a bit of your work, you talk about what you've been up to, and there'll be a quick presentation, a bit of a discussion, and then you'll get some feedback from these assessors. So you'll get a different level of feedback from your supervisors. So there's quite a network of support that's all around you to look after you and to progress work and to provide the expertise and the input you need. The Doctoral College is also at the University of Wolverhampton. Not every university has a Doctoral College. This event today is brought to you by the Doctoral College. And the Doctoral College is something you'll have membership of and provides across the year from early morning to mid-evening, a great variety of skills sessions, training sessions, social sessions, events, hangouts, all kinds of things blended. So all of it at the moment is online. Previously, we would also do some stuff in person and online, but we're adapting to the current circumstances. And the Doctorate College is there for you, to look after you, to advise you. It also ensures the smooth running of registration matters, of assessment matters, right the way through the Viva, which is the final assessment at the end after submission to award of the PhD. In other universities where they don't have a doctoral college, often these complicated matters are looked after somewhat locally, so they can be a bit slower. But with the doctoral college arrangement, we're very quick in dealing with all of these things and providing an awful lot of support. We publish a guidebook of research events right across the university twice a year. So in the Postgraduate Research Experience Survey, which is a survey talking to all the postgraduates, we're rated very highly in satisfaction. We're rated very highly in terms of research culture. We're rated very highly in terms of postgraduates saying that they understand the progression, the assessment, and what's expected of them. You know, Deborah and I obviously have both had the experience of doing doctorates. You don't have to go back many years when none of this support was on offer, and you would just have maybe one supervisor who may be good or may not be so good. You wouldn't have so much support. So it really is a new development, and it's something that I think is very important for the doctoral experience. What is the Pgr offer? This is an offer or an agreement that we have with our postgraduate researchers. And it includes, you can download it from the website, but it includes things like dedicated hot space Pgr exclusive rooms across all the campuses. So we have rooms that are just for those studying doctorates, with computers, with kind of various social elements close to kind of cafes, opening different hours. Some are open 24/7, some are in libraries, some are specific to departments and disciplines. So we guarantee you a hot space environment. There are other bits and pieces, money to attend conferences, money for resources upon application, 2 levels of skills development happening with discipline-specific skills at your faculty, and then more generic skills, including employment skills at the doctoral college level. We also try to arrange teaching for those who want it, and we've had a lot of success in that. So a lot of our doctoral researchers would like a bit of experience teaching, looking after seminars, delivering lectures, and every year we do that, and we manage to place people to build up CV experience. So there's quite a bit in the offer, which is our being very clear as to what you can expect from us. So the research culture at Wolverhampton is really quite lively, quite active. We have a lot of coming together of researchers from all over the world, and we also include social events, and we like to include a kind of opportunity for forum, for sharing of good practice. You have postgraduate reps who are channeling your feedback into the correct areas, and we have, you know, presentation days. We really have quite a bit, so that the watchword for me is that you can really immerse yourself in the research culture, even if you don't live nearby. You know, you can come up, you can arrange supervision meeting, to attend a skills session, to attend a social event. There's really quite a lot going on. I mentioned the guide of research events that we publish twice a year. I mean, often that includes hundreds and hundreds. And then, of course, you have all the stuff available online to you as well. So it really is a very rich research culture. And our postgraduates have placed us very high, I think 11th in the UK out of 200 universities in terms of their satisfaction with the research culture. I say this as an important thing because in many other universities, there's a sense of isolation or being stranded, of not really knowing what you're meant to do. And I think the transition from undergraduate and masters, where it's quite structured, into postgraduate researcher, where you're kind of structuring your own week, can be quite tricky for some people. So this research culture is really quite important. Okay, so that's a bit of background about what we get up to. Do you know what? I've missed out the assessment element. I've talked about the annual progress review, but I'll note at the end that you have, in common with all universities, a deadline. You submit your thesis. We have a viva voce, which is an interview or discussion with examiners. So they're talking to you about the thesis. Deborah and I do numerous sessions preparing our students for this experience. And then on the basis of the thesis and the viva, there will be some kind of correction process. In common with the sector, there will be different levels of corrections that can take a week, that can take maximum a year before the PhD itself is awarded. We also have a sort of exit award mechanism, which is also true of every university, whereby if a year or so in, having started a PhD, it doesn't seem to be quite for you, then you can switch to an MPhil and get that MPhil award fairly quickly upon the submission of a smaller thesis. So here are some questions around applications. How do I apply? Well, we have an application portal, so it'd be a matter of going there and doing the initial application, which I'm going to come to in a bit. What start dates do you have? As I've mentioned, we can start people 12 times a year, so the 1st of any month. But if you're given a start date of the 1st of July, then we can take you up to the 14th of July. So there can be a 2-week period during which time you can register. It can be a bit tricky around visas. So international applicants after CAS numbers know that there can be a bit of delay around securing the paperwork. So we're very, very flexible. We can start you a couple of weeks later, we can start you the next month. What we won't do is say something like, okay, you've missed the July start date, you'll have to wait for the October start date, which is what many universities would do. So we're very flexible in those respects. What's in an application? Well, we have a 2-stage application process, and we have a very straightforward to do initial application that we call an expression of interest. So you can imagine that contains a bit of biographical information, qualifications, things like that. And then it asks you to give a smaller overview of the proposed research project. And on the application portal, you'll find notes as to what kind of things we would expect. You know, a suggested draft title, maybe a bit of key reading, maybe the key research questions, how it builds on experience or master's level stuff that you've already been involved in. You know, these kind of sections that you can consider as you construct a research proposal in outline. So we would take that and then we would very quickly look at that. And we aim to get back to you in about 3, maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks, depending on the nature of the research. That's really quick. Some universities can take months and months to respond to you. If we can do it, we'll move you ahead. If we can't do it, then at that point we would say, so we won't have cost you anything. It won't have taken much time. I'll come on to areas where we can't do it in a bit. If we move you ahead, then we'll put you in touch with a potential supervisor, and this person will help you develop that research proposal. So they'll develop a full research proposal. There'll be a bit of chat, a bit of back and forth, until the point where we think it's, you know, good enough, it's strong enough, you're confident enough to begin. At that point, we'll also do an interview, but the interview will be somewhat more of a chat, and we can do that online as well, and we would be doing that online at the moment. Only at that point, I think, would we take references up, and that would move you towards an unconditional offer, which means that we're ready to take you whenever you're ready to start. So I think really, we're trying to see what you've got to tell us, and then giving you support and building up around what you've got to tell us a research proposal with an awful lot of help and guidance and support. What we're not doing is taking a full proposal that takes an eon to write, and then just getting back to you 6 months later and saying no or yes, you can start in 4 months. We're very much believers in widening opportunity. And for me and for Deborah, that's all about taking people with their particular skills and life experiences and qualifications and working out a path for them to start with us. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. What do we look for in a PhD proposal? I think we look for something that is doable. So we don't want people talking about reorganizing the NHS, but we might be interested in somebody who's talking about, I don't know, some aspects of communications between patients and doctors, just to cite an example that we've dealt with quite recently. So something that is not going to be across for your own back, but something that can be mastered and done within the standard time frame. We look for something that is grounded in academic writing already. So something where there's already a few people who are researching in this area, there's a bit of a discipline recognition of what you're doing, but you want to forward it. And maybe that's the next thing we're looking for. What it is that you're going to contribute to the field. We're not saying that you need to necessarily say this with absolute clarity, but I think we're saying we would like some originality, some freshness, something that you can say, look, no one's done this before, and I'm going to move it forward, and I'm going to do this. Often the experience of doing a master's dissertation is one of, I think, quite creative frustration, that you wish somebody had written a book on this aspect of this, and they haven't, but you're going to do that research. Or it can be from working in professions, there's a frustration that something could be developed and done and it hasn't been. And this PhD project will be looking to do just that. So we look for those things, and we also look obviously for something that fits with our general levels of expertise, which is my second question. Why would you decline a proposal? There are some things that we, simply couldn't do because they're within disciplines that we're not necessarily able to provide expertise for. Not every university can cover every discipline. That's standard stuff. We might decline a proposal as well because we're not convinced that the proposer can successfully execute this proposal. And this is quite an ethical dilemma for us, in the sense of we are only going to offer a place to somebody that can do the PhD. We can't offer a place to somebody who's not equipped to do it, or the project is too much, because that's obviously going to result in some problems. So we're looking for stuff that is achievable and that is doable. Obviously as well, there's a quality threshold around that. So we may simply decline a proposal if we feel it doesn't hit that quality threshold that we need. In terms of qualifications and declining, there could be an IELTS level, which is English as a Foreign Language qualification. We would need 7 for most of our subjects, apart from 6.5 for a couple of science subjects. All of this is listed on the website. In common with other universities, if you have a master's or a first degree from a UK university or universities where English is the predominant language, then you wouldn't need IELTS. That generates a lot of questions, which typically we take on a case-by-case basis. And I've already mentioned to you the 2 stages of application. Okay, the final thing I want to just very quickly talk about is employment prospects. There's quite a lot of data around enhanced income levels for people with PhDs. Every couple of years, I have a task which is around looking at destination of leavers. So I'm able to gather data from about a decade's worth of people have completed PhDs with us, and we're able to gather data around salaries, positions, whether what they're doing relates directly to their PhD, which we then split down into various categories to try and work out the benefits. And it's really good to see that many people who do PhDs, approximately 50%, will head back into universities. So many of them will then work as academics, and many of them therefore will, directly use the PhD in that respect. The other 50% will often work in industry, particularly in terms of hard sciences. The skills that you would acquire through that would set you up for postdoctoral research, industry research. These people are very mobile, often working all around the world. There's a category of these people who seem to be on £250,000 to £500,000 that seem to be working for science underwriting of global insurance companies. So yeah, there is a high level of profitability there. Other people will take a PhD and would take it back to the job that they may already be working in, which could be around teaching, could be around, museum curation, could be around employment practices. And the PhD will represent the highest qualification and therefore enhance their employment prospects. So when I talked earlier about fitting around the needs of our applicants and our researchers, I do really mean people who are mid-career, who want to retrain, who want to upskill. And a lot of what we do is about accommodating that. So not asking people to sort of quit their job and do a PhD, but to run these two things simultaneously. So obviously the PhD, the professional doctorate, is the highest qualification. And obviously, therefore, that leads to an enhanced level of employment, especially across the sector. And I guess this is my final point. At the moment, in terms of the pandemic and what will transpire after the pandemic, it doesn't seem to be a surprise to say that there'll be a very tough jobs market. And traditionally, that's quite a good time for people to upskill, to retrain, to get a higher qualification. And it's good to see, therefore, that we're able to, offer that in the current moment. So I think that concludes my brief run through of the elements of what to expect and how to apply. We're about 10 to the hour, so I think we should take some questions, not just for me, but for our esteemed panel members as well. Deborah, would you be able to take us through some of these questions?
Our panel members and members of staff at the university and other PhD students who are in this session have been very diligent in responding to people as you've been talking. But there are a couple of questions perhaps that you might want to cover and talk in a little bit more detail. So one of the questions, I think, which is one that we get asked a lot, is about how do people manage doing a doctorate and working?
I should defer to panel members. Can colleagues talk about that maybe? Tavashni, you do this, don't you?
Okay, I don't think I'm in any way perfect, but I'll tell you that I managed the first. I would say it's more difficult now for me because I have more on my plate and I'm in the write-up year. But I think I've had a full-time teaching job. The bonus is I don't have kids. I think that's a big bonus in the way of not having that responsibility. But I've also had a part-time job, which means I lecture at Sorbonne University and I teach full-time. And I've had the PhD. It's only because I'm transitioning and trying to get into lecturing that I had to keep the part-time job at the Sorbonne University. I think I drew on Tara Brabazon's vlogs and also a book that Deborah gave as a recommendation to us at the beginning of our doctorate, and that's Stepping Stones to Your Doctorate by Vernon Trafford and Lesham. I put it in the chat, and I think it's well worth reading that because it gives you a timeline of what's happening when. And I think planning and seeing the road ahead is important. I just try to find pockets of time. I used to use my weekends a lot in my first and second year. And even now, I think I use weekends a lot, and it's a small sacrifice, but it's got to be done. I'm a morning person, so I try to work in the morning as much as I can. But yeah, I think the mistake I made in my first year is that I drained myself out. I just put in so much that I was very burnt out, and I had to take a leave of absence for a month. I was so burnt out that Deborah had to tell me to take a leave of absence. So yeah, just pace it out. And I think if you find small pockets of time rather than just do what I did, I'm just being honest, I made a mistake, and I went so much into my networking, and it's brilliant because I built a good network and I did a lot of things in my first year. I look back on my APR and I'm really proud of what I've written and looking at the list of things I've done. But in the process, try to pace yourself and not burn yourself out. But Tara Brabazon does some good vlogs on time management.
So we've
sorry,
got a
Deborah.
Okay.
Sorry, I was going to chip in then. So yeah, I mean, as from doing the prof doc, which is only delivered in the part-time mode, I work full time. And for me, I spend quite a lot of time in the evenings doing my work, and I set aside time slots in the evening that I stick to rigidly. A lot of the holidays that I have, so half-term holidays that I have, tend to be taken up doing my work, but it works quite well in that sense. But what I found useful right at the start of my study was to create a Gantt chart. And Gantt charts for me are absolutely fantastic, and it's a visual way of being able to see how your project is going to look over maybe 2, 3 or 4 years. And it also shows you, again, what activities that you can do and what you can't do until you've done a particular stage. So maybe consider also looking at doing a Gantt chart right at the beginning, just to help you plan out what you think your work is going to look like over the next 2 or 3 years.
I mean, I must say, when I started, when I did an MPhil, then I did a PhD, I worked for this high street bank's insurance element. I had no idea what I was doing for them. But I quite liked striking the balance between doing that and working on the PhD. And then I worked for like a London language school. I think I was like a sort of pastoral liaison for Italian, German teenagers on language holidays. I'm sure there are many children that were born subsequent to my failures in that particular job. But I was able to kind of have a very nice balance between the professional stuff and doing the PhD. And I find that looking at the experience of many of our PhD researchers, having that job, having that other element kind of structures the week a bit. And those people who are entirely full-time doing a PhD, they can find it quite hard to find a structure. And they're not necessarily quicker than people who have also got jobs. So I guess it's a matter of, management of balance, things like that.
So we've got a couple of questions about the process of application. So there's do the professional doctoral route. Does the professional doctoral route have the 2-stage process? I think it doesn't. It just has an application process, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it has one start date a year, which is the autumn term. So we would expect applications to be going in, but sort of between now and September, I think. And there are full and part-time routes, but I don't think there's a part-time route for every professional doctorate we do. So, because the professional doctorate has a taught element for a couple of years. Then it moves on to a thesis research element with a viva at the end for a couple of years.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. Lindsay's asking whether the process is any different for a creative writing PhD.
Oh, Lindsay, well, in that case, we really welcome what we call practice-based research. And we therefore are very happy to take people with creative outputs and to have those as part of a portfolio of submission, which is often around a smaller thesis and creative outputs, documentaries, films, theatre, art. We've just had someone awarded a PhD who's like a local poet, and a number of his collections, his volumes went into that. We also have the Wolverhampton Literature Festival, so we work really quite closely with people who are creative writers. So we'd absolutely welcome that. But to answer your question directly, yeah, it would be a kind of through a standard application process, but we would expect you to be talking about those kind of things in the application.
So for members of staff at the university, if the university doesn't have the expertise in the area that they want to research, is it possible to have a supervisor from an alternate university?
Is that from a member of staff at Wolverhampton, I wonder?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, in theory it is, but it would need to be arranged with your faculty, your line managers, stuff like that. I don't think we have one hard position on it, but in theory it is, and we have a number of people doing PhDs with supervisors from other universities, and many of our supervisors likewise will be, co-supervising students based at other universities as well.
In terms of the application process, would you recommend making an appointment with a supervisor in the field that you're interested in before making an application for the course?
Yeah, just contact them, email them. Say, can we have a chat? I'm interested in this. Here are some ideas. Or if you're not sure who they are, just contact Deborah, contact myself. We can put you in touch with the right people. Yeah, I think they would really welcome that, definitely. And it can be worth those things, because there can be elements that we do, expertise areas, access to archives that we know about that you may not know about. So we can add all of that to the conversation about developing a research idea.
So for somebody who's thinking about starting a doctorate in September 21, is it worth sending a research proposal now, or would it be better waiting until closer to the time?
I think it's up to you. I think it can, the process of from first proposing to actually fully being accepted can take at the quickest 4 or 5 weeks. It can take a bit beyond that if the applicant needs more time to do a research proposal. So applying 1 month before you want to start can be difficult. I wouldn't necessarily think applying 14 months prior is necessary, but there's nothing to stop you doing it. There's on the application, it says, what's your projected start date? So yeah, you could do that. It might be good to know you've got this coming up as a thing to work towards.
There's a question about what happens if your supervisor moves universities.
In that case, and I'll answer in respect to the general position in the UK, if you're towards the end of the thesis, so that changing supervisors would be quite disruptive. So if you're like maybe 5 or 6 months away from submission, then probably we would ask the supervisor to remain with us to look after you. That would be quite normal. If you're working very closely with the supervisor and you're maybe more towards the beginning, then you could move with the supervisor, which would mean deregistering from us and re-registering into another university. There may be some complication because you wouldn't want to start again, so you might have to register into the second year of the other university. Likewise, we take students who want to register midway through with us, who come with supervisors. Alternatively, we offer you a new supervision team, new members of staff. But I mean, it won't be both supervisors. I mean, you'll have probably continuity. So the second supervisor might leave and we can give you a replacement, or the first and we can give you a replacement. So we kind of go with the desire of the student. And for me, therefore, the student experience is quite important in that. The only thing I'll add to that is that it shouldn't be disruptive, because we have a sort of a changeover plan and things like that. But if it is, then it's the kind of thing we would give you an extension for if you wanted a month's extension or something. So yeah, across the sector, in the last 15, 20 years, there's quite a bit of churn of supervisors shifting from one institution to another. So that's not an unusual situation. In the European experience, often the supervisor leaves and takes the whole group with them. It might even have to switch countries, so that can be really quite disruptive.
What normally happens at Wolverhampton is that because it's a supervisory team, if it's a director of studies, the second supervisor will step up to director of studies. Another supervisor will join the team, and the other supervisor remains on the team as an advisor. So they might be working somewhere else, but they're still working with you. So that way, you've still got those people supporting your doctorate, but you don't have the you don't have the upheaval of having to move universities. So we've got some questions about the application route. Can you just clarify the application process? Are you right in thinking that's initial expression of interest? What's the approximate length of that? It's about is it 500 to 800 words?
Yeah, it depends on the subject. I mean, if it's science, it can be quite straightforward, 300-400 words. If it's humanities, social sciences, it could be 600, 1,000 words. Some people have already, I don't know, a 2,000 word, 1,800 word proposal, which they can send that along to us. There's no absolute limit. If you look on the application portal, we also have booklets of sample PhD proposals that would give you an idea of the kind of things that would be in there and the kind of scope.
And then they continue to, if that is accepted, then they continue to work with the potential supervisory team to write a research proposal.
Yep.
Lovely, thank you. Graham's a member of staff at the university, and he'd like to know about the PhD by publication route.
Well, quite specialist, but it takes 1 year. It means submitting for consideration a portfolio of published work to a certain word count, which in the social sciences, humanities is something like 70, 80,000 words. And something like 3/4 need to have been published in the last 5 years. All this information is in the research student handbook. Then there'll be some contextual writing as well, talking about the unification of the research direction and what you've found. So you're not given a supervisor, you're given an advisor, you're given 12 months, and then that's assessed via a viva. At any one point, Graham, there's probably maybe 2 members of staff doing PhD by published works.
Okay, I was just looking for the research regulations. Graham, they're on the research regulations page if you want to have a look. Okay. So Sandra's written a research proposal, an expression of interest, which is about 700 to 800 words. That's totally fine. Mm-hmm. And then the research proposal that's written a little bit later will be probably somewhere around 2,000 to 2,500 words, but you'll be working with your supervisors to do that. Okay. I think that's all of the questions. Is there anything else before we go? We thank our panel and who've been absolutely brilliant at talking in the chat and giving an overview, and to Ben. So please do, if you're considering doing a doctorate, please do come and join us. We'd really love to see you. And we hope to see some of you in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, and thanks to our panel members as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you to Chris, to Vashni, and to Evelyn for your lovely words of advice at the beginning of the session. And thank you, Ben, for talking us through the process.
Could you give us a quick note of the next event at 6 o'clock, Deborah?
Okay, there is an event at 6 o'clock. Please do come and join us. We are celebrating the work of some of our academics who've published books recently. So Mecca, who you can see in the chat, is one of those people. The link to that session is there, so we'd really love to see you there. Please do come and join us.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Maybe see you in a bit.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. That was really great. And thank you for the lovely words.
Oh, no, it's okay.
No
I've
problem.
already got people who've signed into the Doctoral College Facebook group.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
That's
they've
really
already
nice.
signed in. I'm just approving them.
Oh, that's lovely.
The amount of followers I've got on Twitter has just gone through the
I
roof as
know.
well.
After the meeting, yes.
Oh, that's lovely. That's so good to see.
So, so the next one's at 6 o'clock, did you say?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It is. Please do come and join us.
Yep, I will do. Right, I'm going to head off.
There's Carl Wilding. Would love to see my research proposal, so I'm going to send it to him.
Okay.
He's already written to me and he said he'd like to see a research proposal.
Okay. Okay, that's lovely. Right, I'm going to log off, and because I need to set up at 5:30 for the next session.
Enjoy.
Sandra, who works at the Sandra works at the university, don't you? She'd love to see a research proposal as well.
Okay.
So she is in-house.
Where should I make it available? Should I send it to you, Deborah?
Let me just have a look. So Sandra is S Pratt, all one word with 2 T's, at wlv.ac.uk. So it might just be worth dropping Sandra in. Yeah, so it's S Pratt, all one word with 2 T's.
Okay. I'll send
at WLV.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, and see you later. Take care.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye, Chris.
See you, Devashni. I'll catch up with you on Twitter, yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Bye.
Yeah.
See ya.
And I'm praying there's no thunderstorms.
Me too. Me
For
too.
Chris, because he's having a hard time with them.
Oh.
Okay.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.